Hi, readers. Let's talk about what I read in the month of September. Okay, so September wasn't terrible. It wasn't where I'd like it to have been, but some things got in the way of it being a little bit more robust. My trip to DC, if you've seen the vlog, you know I did not read a lot. I mean, I did. I read a lot on the flights. I did not get a lot of reading done while I was there. So that dampened some of my enthusiasm. And even though I had some sick days after that, I was really not in the space of wanting to read many of those days. But I really did pretty well, and I'm happy with the books that I read, and there were a couple that I didn't finish that I've already talked about, so it might have been a different experience had I been able to finish some of those, but I really enjoyed my reading month in the month of September, so let's not cut it short. It was a great, great reading month. All right, the first one I finished in the month of September was Worst Case Scenario by T.J. Newman, narrated by Joe Morton. I'm saying that because I really love Joe Morton as a narrator, and it was an audiobook for me. I purchased this on Libro.fm. This is my third and read by T.J. Newman, which I think makes me a T.J. Newman completist, at least for the moment. I suspect she has some other books in the works, but I have enjoyed all of these. I gave this one 4 stars. I think I've given all of T.J. Newman's books 4 stars. They're solid reads. I will say I don't think I liked this one as much as I liked the others. And I'm trying to figure out why. I think it has to do with the fact that it was more about the nuclear power plant being impacted by the crash and less about the people on the plane. So I have been kind of enticed by these plane dramas. And this one was about a plane that crashed into a nuclear power plant, but it was really then about the impact of that on that community, which I found to be compelling, but not quite as compelling, I guess, as the others. So maybe it was more like a 3.5 for me, but I'm just going to keep it at a 4. I will continue to pick up TJ Newman's books. I will say that what I loved about this is that her character development is very strong. I love Joe Morton as a narrator, as I said. I appreciated the way that she described all of the things that were related to this and what had to happen to keep the people in this community near this nuclear power plant safe. I actually have friends who live near nuclear power plants, so I think it made it more, it came to life for me in a different way, maybe because I know they have family that works at the plant and they have, certain things occur. And it's got to be kind of a scary lifestyle, I would think, in some ways. I mean, I think generally we're pretty safe, but what if a plane crashed into one of them, right? I did enjoy the variety of people that were featured in the novel that were impacted by this disaster. And I just, generally speaking, really enjoyed the book at large. And again, I will continue to read TJ Newman as long as she continues to publish books, probably about planes. I don't know if she would write anything else, but yeah, I enjoyed it. I was glad. And I had started it in August, and I was pretty well finished with it, but not quite complete when I got to September. So I finished it really, really quickly. I finished it on September 5th. So there you go. Then next, I started to read and finished The Boyfriend by Frida McFadden. This was an arc that was sent to me unsolicited, and I then read it through NetGalley. I'm not sure why the publishers of Frida McFadden's book chose me, but they did, and I honored that and did read it in a timely manner because it comes out on October 1st. So this was my third read by this author as well. I have read the Ward 6 or something like that. One by One, I think, was the first one that she wrote that I read, and then Ward D. I think I enjoyed One by One a little bit more than I enjoyed Ward D, but they both were 3-star reads for me. And The Boyfriend was also a 3-star read for me. But there were times where I thought it was going to be a 2.5. I will say, I don't think I'm Frida McFadden's ideal reader. So there's that. Don't think about this in any way impacting your enjoyment of Frida or your, enjoyment of her books. I'm just not sure that I am her person. But as I said in my review, she's a very prolific writer. She churns out a new book multiple times a year. That can't be easy. And she comes up with these unique plots for sure. As I shared my review, which is on Goodreads and it's also on my Instagram and Facebook page, I think. I shared my review, and a friend of mine who kind of surprised me when she commented and said that she and her partner were reading these, she said that the ones about the maid are much better in her opinion. And so I may read The Housemaid. I think I even had it for a while on Kindle Unlimited, but I don't know if I still do. I may get to that, but for the most part, let's focus on The Boyfriend. So this is about Sydney Shaw, who begins this story by sharing that she has a blind date with someone, or a date from a hookup site. I guess they don't call them blind dates anymore. They call them, dating app dates. I don't know what they call them. I'm old, but nevertheless, she has this date with this guy, pretty much a disaster. This guy is just really creepy, and he's already kind of moving into like, we're going to be together forever kinds of statements, and I want you to meet my mom, and just a lot of stuff. So it kind of goes from this might be okay to, oh, this is creepy. She tries to get away from him. He follows her. I think this is an important beginning for you to know because I don't think it mentions this in the synopsis, but this also introduces her to someone else, and the story unfolds from there. So this novel is about this woman's kind of navigating these waters of dating people, while also discovering that some people in her community are being harmed, and women are being targeted. And so, who is it that's targeting these women? One of which she knows pretty well. So also connects back with her ex, who is a police officer. So I thought that was actually a good plot point, and I enjoyed his character. I thought it was good that it, kind of shared this multi kind of connected experience that she has. And so it made it hard for you to sort of solve it easily, I would say. And generally speaking, the plot wasn't the problem for me. The problem for me was the sophomoric language of this writing. It just felt like I was reading a book that was written for a teenager. And sometimes I just cringed at some of the things that she wrote. And again, this is just me. So don't take this as I'm going to hate this book. It's a fast, easy read to fly through. I read it on my Kindle, obviously, and it wasn't a disaster of a read by any stretch. I just think I wanted a little bit more meat to the words that she used, and a little bit more meat to the nuances of these characters. It was pretty predictable all along the way. So obviously I recommend it to fans of Frida McFadden. I recommend it to people who think they might like it. I mean, just, take a look at it. But I also recommend it as a palate cleanser. I think it's a good palate cleanser. There's no high expectation there. You don't have to work really hard at, understanding what's happening. It just seems like that would be a great fit. So don't underestimate the value of it just because I didn't love it. Then this is interesting. I didn't expect this to show up on my to read or to my read list as a book. So I feel a little bit like I cheated in this regard, but it automatically happened. I found a book on Goodreads called Layover by Emily Henry. I recently finished the last Emily Henry that I hadn't read, and I enjoyed it much more than some of the others. And so when I saw this, I hit want to read. And then I discovered that it was free for me to read and that it was short. It was a short novel. So I went ahead and said I was reading it. Let me just say, short novel is like like one chapter. Like it's super, super short. I don't even know how many pages it was on my Kindle, but it was super, super short. And there was a way for you to find it. It's free. And I gave it 5 stars, mind you. It is an extension of Beach Read, which was one of my favorites by Emily Henry. So it is an extended chapter, essentially, of Beach Read later in the future. And if I had known that, I probably still would have read it. And I gave it 5 stars because it didn't have to work real hard to make me excited. And so, yeah, so if you're a fan of Emily Henry, go into Goodreads, keep pushing buttons till you find it, and let me know what you think because that was fun. But I wouldn't necessarily count that as a legitimate book. So I guess I really only read 5 books in the month of September, but it showed up as read. So. All right, then next, I picked up an older one that I've had for a while, and that's The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. I also had this on Kindle. I was just a Kindle crazy girl this month. I read a lot of stuff, partly because of the traveling, but just partly because it's been easier for my site. So copyright 2020. This book is the first in a series, and I wanted to try this before I thought about getting anything else. And I was not sure how I was going to feel about it, although a lot of people love it. And it's blurbed by a number of people that I've read on the back. So, but this is set in England. So there's a number of these people that live in this kind of independent living place. It's pretty posh, it seems. Like it has lakes and it has walking tracks and they have activities. And this is a posh kind of a place. Much more posh probably than the one my mother lived in, but still, my mother had a lovely time. So there's Ron, who's a former socialist firebrand, Joyce, who's widowed and pining for someone. Joyce narrates this in the form of a diary, so that was fun. Ibrahim is a therapist, and Elizabeth is very unique. And probably Elizabeth and Joyce were my favorite characters. So a local developer of this place that they live in is found dead. And there are some nuances to this and some hidden things. And so the police come to investigate, but they discover that these people are already going to be investigating this murder, and they're taking it on as their detectives, and they're just showing up. And I really, really loved it. And I really want to get to the second book sooner than later. But I also really, really want it in hardback, and it's hard to find right now in hardback. So I'm gonna have to do a little digging to make that work because I mean, I haven't really looked carefully yet. And so I can't wait for the next one. And I gave this 5 stars. That's how much I liked it. 5 stars. Another 5 star read for me. Surprise! The Brier Club by Kate Quinn. This was my first completed novel by Kate Quinn, despite the fact that I have been collecting her novels for years. My reading the Kates has begun. Okay, this is the one set in the McCarthy era in the 50s. This is the UK cover because I ordered it from Blackwell's. I've said this all to you before, but in case you didn't see that video, this is about a number of women and a couple of kids and a guy or two that connect because everyone lives in this boarding house called, by them, the Brier Club, because it's on Briarwood Lane or something like that. These people get together, they eat meals, mostly women. They all have their own work and their own jobs and their own history. So they tell you a lot about themselves. But in the early on in the book, you realize that something terrible has happened in this house and they're all sort of being looked at by the police. So it's not a surprise to you that this happens. In fact, I think it's part of the synopsis. Yes, a shocking act of violence tears the house apart. Okay, so there's Grace March, who was one of my favorite characters. There's also Rika, who I loved. There's Claire. They're all very, very well developed. The plot is consistently active, so it was not hard for me to finish it. The only challenge I had about this book is that the house itself is a character and has a voice. And I don't think that that's a spoiler in any way for you because it's just her choice of writing in this, but I felt like it was kind of clunky. I felt like I didn't need that. Like I could have had that information from someone else, from the police or from one of the women. I just felt like that was really weird. But other than that, I loved this book. And again, I gave it 5 stars. So I highly recommend this one. And as you may know from the other video, I did not finish the Diamond Eye. So I'm gonna have to do something with that later. And then I also finished my nonfiction pick for the quarter in the nick of time, really. The Light We Carry by Michelle Obama, Overcoming Uncertain Times. I loved this, maybe even more than Becoming. This was also a 5-star read for me, so this was a great month, even though I didn't read a lot. She talks about us. She talks about how we care for ourselves in difficult situations. This starts by speaking about some of the things that were a result of the pandemic, some of the things that were a result of the election in 2021, and how volatile it was, the insurrection that happened as a result of some things that were put in place, how we can come together with family, how our family has shaped us, how we find family that support us, especially how do you find family to support you when you are the first lady in the White House. So she talks about that a lot. She talks about how she developed some friendships. She talks about how she raised the girls, how her mother helped to raise the girls in the White House for 2 terms, right? She also talks about the impact of race and ethnicity and gender on women in DC and in politics and in these veins. And that was really very helpful. And also how we feel like we're less than just because something happened in our families that we had no control over, which is very, very significant. She said she had been a Black woman. This is one of her friends who said, I've been a Black woman in a white space. And she thought that if she reached a little too hard, she would readily get judged as an overreacher. And so this woman says, pretty much every day at work, she said, with a touch of weariness and a touch of humor, I feel like I'm deciding whether or not to hug the queen, which is a reference to Michelle Obama, hugging the queen and people feeling like she had overstepped and the queen feeling like that was fine. It was just fine. There's another whole paragraph about reacting versus responding, which is something I work on for myself a lot and I work on with my clients a lot. I really liked that. There's so many quotes in this book that are so incredible. And I didn't highlight them, and I didn't have my little darts. She talks about this saying that she came up with during that difficult time that kind of now has been one of her trademarks, which is when they go low, we go high. She talks about where that came from. She talks about having to speak, again, raising her children. There's a lot of resources here for therapy, for mental health resources, helplines, resource referrals. I think that was very important for her. She has an index at the end that kind of helps you to understand where some things came from, and where some of the photos came from is also linked. But I absolutely loved this book. And I was talking to a friend of mine the other day who we were talking about divisiveness within these political parties that we have, and just how these election years are so critically important for us, but also we become, not we, you and I and all of us, but we as a nation become so divided and so difficult with each other. And she and I probably are a little bit misaligned in some of our beliefs about politics, but we're both very open and we both do this work that is very nonpartisan. And so we were talking about it, and she said, what are you reading? And I said this, and I don't have any expectation that everybody's going to say, oh, I love her, or oh, and then she said, I read it too, and it's remarkable. And again, we're probably on different sides of the aisle, so to speak, at times, but this is about women. This is about people. This is about humans. And so if you aren't aware of these books by her, the first one is called Becoming, which is a memoir about her life and how she got to where she was in the White House. And then this one is about how she's recovered during and after that experience and taking care of herself carefully. So she's got this beautiful sweater and she's like that. And it is really like a warm hug. I'm not kidding. It's really like a cup of tea and a warm hug. So I had three 5-star reads this month. Can you believe it? I cannot. And I'm really jazzed about the month of October too. Hopefully, I can make this a little bit brighter. I'm almost close. I have one book left to read, and really two because of the Emily Henry situation, but I have two books to read to meet my goal of 55 books, and then I have the rest of the year to just read what I want and not worry about it, which I don't really worry about it. But sometimes when I choose a bigger book, I think, oh, but see, if you chose a smaller one, you could meet your goal faster. So I have to really talk myself down out of that space and read what I want to read. So that's what I'm going to try to do this month. I'm going to try to read some horror. I'm going to try to read some fun things, but I really am grateful for all of the work that was put into each of these novels, even the ones that maybe were not quite landing to me in a way that was an impact that I expected. They were still enjoyable. So I really had a great reading month, and I hope you did too. And I hope you'll tell me what you read and what you thought of it. And if you read any of these, you know the drill. I just want to know all the things about you and what kinds of books you like and what kinds of books you would recommend to me. So I will watch in the comments below. Be patient with me as I recover and come back into the real world and then get ready to go away again for another couple of days. But it's a lovely time in my life. Take good care. Thanks for watching and happy reading. Bye.